What do you even know about a qualified plan? Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. Let's talk today about the qualified plan. Now, what I would preface by saying is that I have had a state retirement before, having been a state employee, both as a high school Spanish teacher and as a law enforcement officer in the state of North Carolina. So I come from a background where there was, let's say, a certain percentage of my gross income that was immediately set aside, whether I wanted it to be or not, into a state retirement. And then also I had those electives of choosing a 401k, which I did, and I contributed to a 401k, and I was able to decide how much I wanted to contribute, of course, and in the event that there's a match, there's that as a factor in considering your qualified plan. And really, what I knew, well, before I even say what I knew, let me ask you, what do you even know about your qualified plan? Any kind of a qualified plan, the 401k, the 503B, there's so many numbers and letters. What do you know about it? What I can say is, after years of having had mine, I really only might have known, based off of my quarterly statement that I got in the mail, whether or not my overall number went up or down, and whether I had set it at a mild or a moderate or a higher risk setting. And that's really all that I knew about my own qualified plan. So I would just ask you to rethink your thinking. What is it that you really know about your qualified plan? I'll wait. And I know that there are those out there that are very studious, that you don't do much of anything without analyzing and running spreadsheets and who knows what all. I know that there are the uber analytical types out there, but I would wonder if the vast majority of folks don't even understand what a qualified plan is, what it does, how it works. I would suspect that they very well may not even know who the person is that is managing that plan, and lots of other factors. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to be evaluating IBC, the infinite banking concept, as conceived and described in R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, and also these qualified plans. Now, let's start by looking at some natural laws. Let me start with motion. See, before we even begin talking about infinite banking or other entities, programs, or plans, let's just consider something like motion. Okay? Motion is a natural law, meaning that our bodies move blood, lungs move air, the oceans have tides that move, the winds blow, there are revolutions of planets and galaxies and such. So where there is life, there is movement. Nature shows us movement is a natural law. So the first question that I'm going to come to is, when we are pitched this idea of the qualified plan, isn't it that we're supposed to be setting aside a nest egg? We're supposed to be investing or saving for retirement. And we are supposed to be putting money somewhere for 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever time frame it is that we're working in, to arrive at these golden years where we're living off of this nest egg, this retirement that we have. And I know that there are many famous, infamous financial gurus out there that have terms and terminology, and folks that you and I both have heard of. And we'll try and cover a spectrum of those views and perspective, because I believe that we can learn something from anyone, right? That we can learn by a good example, and we can be warned by a bad example if we would just use reason and logic and some imagination when evaluating this idea of qualified plan. But we're told, it's purported to us to park our money, to not touch it. There's even this phrase of set it and forget it. I loathe that saying now. I loathe it to my core because I do come from this perspective now. And again, having been on that path of earning a salary in my career and just automatically setting money aside in that qualified plan. And again, there's going to be lots of merit in what I even just described right there. Lots of merit in having a discipline, developing good habits to be able to set money aside for whatever our intended purpose is. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to do with your money, but I will be here to promote the idea that you should be the one that is knowledgeable about what's happening with it, in control of what's happening with it, putting it to its best use according to what you want to be able to do. Again, the idea is becoming your own banker. I don't want to be your banker. I don't want anybody else to be your banker. Just like I don't want you to be my banker or anyone else to be my banker. I want to become my own banker. So the idea of set it and forget it. Park your money. Don't touch it. And a lot of times it's told us that compounding will be taking effect. So that brings us to another natural law. Let me run a scenario by you. And you could quickly do the same. You could pull up your phone or computer, go to your calculator, and just start doubling a penny a day. And let's only run this experiment. If you've never seen me do this or you never heard about this, let's just run this experiment for 30 days, just 1 month. And oftentimes the scenario is asked, what would you prefer that I give you $1 million today? $1 million today, right now, that I give you the $1 million, or this penny doubled scenario for 30 days for that same month that I just described. So if we take 1 penny and we just start, there's my penny. I know the screen might be reversed and things like that, but you'll follow with me here. And I just do this a handful of times. We're up to $20. I mean, that's fantastic. We're in some thousands now, 20,000. It took us a few more clicks to be able to get there. What you will find, and I really would ask you to do it, what you will find is that in that $1 million today, or penny doubled every day for 30 days, you will find out that if you took the million day one, foregoing the opportunity to be the beneficiary of a penny compounding every day for 30 days, you would have missed out on millions. Millions. There's an S there. It's plural. Okay. So compounding is one of those natural laws. If I double that penny, there will be exponential growth. Exponential growth. So motion as a natural law, compounding as a natural law. Next would be the law of use. Now, here's another example. Let's say you tied an arm up against your body and did not use it for a month. Let's run another month-long scenario. Let's say you did not use, you tied it off, it's immobilized one of your limbs for a month while using the other as normal. Now, at the end of that month, when this limb is liberated, you see what I'm doing? That's just an example. You're already imagining what the stark contrast would be between the limb that was used, and especially if it was used well, versus the one that was immobilized. So the law of use is just simply another filter that I would suggest that we use in considering what we do with our money. I mean, and this is something I commonly talk about, we're told to do things with our money that we would never do with the things that money buys. Follow what I'm saying. We would never, just like we're told to park our money for 30 years, we would never go to the grocery store, use money to buy bread, and then set that bread on the counter, and then use it 30 years later. We would never do with what money buys what we're told to do with the money itself. So when we recognize that money is just a means of exchange, we're going to realize that these natural laws are indeed a good filter to use to consider what it is that we're doing with our money, with our means of exchange. If we would never go to the grocery store and buy a gallon of milk and wait 20 years, 10 years even, to consume that product, then shouldn't we question why we would do such a thing with our money? Food for thought, just asking. What I believe we should ask, though, always, is where is our warehouse of wealth? Now, that's a reference to R. Nelson Nash's second book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. Because, again, if money is a means of exchange, and we begin to ask what we do with our money and what purposes we're earmarking it for, perhaps, where do we put that? Where is its home? Where are we going to warehouse our money? Where are we going to warehouse that wealth? So let's dive deeper on that. Now, another is the law, the natural law of access. Can we get to something? Now, in this case, when we're talking about the qualified plan, the system is set up in a way to where before a certain age, that's not dictated by us, there are terms also not dictated by us that limit or prohibit or blockade our access to our capital. So premature access would result in, a 10% penalty, and then whatever the tax implications would be. So you could be looking at something like 45% of your capital being taken away before you could access it. So I believe that another great filter when considering why do we have money or continue to put money, or would we put money into a qualified plan, depending on our preference for access. Do we have access to our capital there? And I think that's a great question, because again, with this mentality of set it and forget it, don't touch it. And again, I question that. Set it and forget it. You're suggesting, as potentially a financial professional, that I should forget my money. Personally, I'm not going to be able to get on board with that very quickly. Also, I would question, who is it that's saying that? I mean, in your place of employment, or however it is that you go about evaluating or reconciling what it is that you already have in place, if it's something that you consider, who is this person? Because again, I'm not trying to disparage financial professionals out there, but I am the proponent that you should be your own banker, so that you should always be at the helm, at the steering wheel, the one in control, and that will include access to your capital. Who is this person that your employer may be marching in front of you once a year to talk about these 401ks and the 503Bs and the 529s and all these different other qualified programs with all these conditions, limits, taxes, penalties, fees? I mean, the list goes on, none of which is dictated by us, none of which is controlled by us. The access is being limited. So these are just some of these natural laws that I believe we should consider as filters when evaluating whether or not to participate or continue participating with a qualified plan as it lines up with our wishes. Now, let's look at some other considerations. Let's talk about taxes. The question I like to ask frequently concerning taxes is, they exist. I believe we should pay our taxes as is necessary, legal. But given the option, would we rather pay taxes on the seed or the harvest? Would we rather pay taxes on the seed of what it is that we have and do and we grow, or on the harvest? Naturally, it would be better to pay on the seed than on the harvest that we anticipate that seed will yield. Okay, well, if that is true, let's just recognize some things that are taking place. Are we talking about pre-tax dollars? And we may or may not be. Are we talking about after-tax dollars? Now, there may be some considerations that we should contemplate about pre-tax dollars. But even if we assume that we're talking purely about after-tax dollars, how many times do we want to be taxed on that dollar? I mean, if you are earning an income and you're taxed right out of the gate on that income, and then with that money that you earn, you pay for things such as a home or rent, because it doesn't matter. Either you're paying taxes on a property that you own or on someone else's property. Either way, you are going to be paying taxes. The consumer pays for everything. Taxes on your vehicles, taxes on your groceries, taxes on the gas that you put in your vehicles, taxes on what it is that we are consuming. And then my question is if we are purchasing, let's say, a financial product, do we then also want to pay taxes on the growth, the harvest of that? I mean, how many times are we going to let the same dollar be taxed? I'm just saying it's something to consider. I'm not a tax expert, but I do believe that we should be evaluating this for ourselves. Next, let's talk about fees. When we enter in and purchase a qualified plan, and we set it and forget it. We set aside our money for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever the case may be. My question concerning fees is, are we or are we not going to be paying fees on the entire sum of whatever that may be? I know I'm making hand gestures here. I mean, which points to another question. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. The financial experts don't know whether it's going to grow. I mean, what guarantee does a 401k have, for example? Other than it may not go below zero, which is not very encouraging. It's not very exciting. So when considering fees, are we or are we not going to pay fees for the entire amount? So consider what I'm saying. Won't we even pay fees? Won't we be footing the bill from our capital and the growth of it to pay for the fees for the tax money that will be collected? I confess, I owned a 401k without ever having considered that particular aspect myself. But just imagine what the fees may end up looking like over the span of some 30-something years, and the amount of fees that would be paid by the consumer, by me or by you, even for dollars that we do not ultimately receive. So the taxes that we would be paying over that time, the fees and even on those taxes that we would be paying over that same amount of time. What about the value of the dollar itself? I mean, if we consider the reality of, if we take $1 today, which I believe we should see is a depreciating medium of exchange, okay? To verify that, just ask yourself, what does a candy bar cost today? What did it cost 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, so on? When we realize that the dollar is a depreciating medium of exchange, in a qualified plan, doesn't that look like we're taking a dollar that's been taxed, it's depreciating, we're funding, I don't even know if I want to call it an asset, but we fund a qualified program wherein we pay taxes and fees for everything that happens. And then we end up with not a guaranteed amount of money. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's look at these different filters. Let's look at these different aspects of the qualified plan. My question is where can we take that same depreciating dollar and fund an appreciating asset with guarantees, with access, with control, with guaranteed growth? Where can we do? And I'm bringing it all together here now, right? All these different things that we've talked about. Where can we fund depreciating dollars into an appreciating asset with all of these characteristics and more? We'll talk about that. Wherein we still can access the capital while it maintains its compounding and its growth, and it's hedged against market volatility, experiences no market volatility, has guarantees and all these different things that we are considering when looking at what it means to practice infinite banking or procure a qualified program, and all these different variables. Where can we do that? And where we arrive at is a whole life policy from a mutual company that pays a dividend. That's it, a whole life policy. Some folks are stroking out when they hear this for the first time. A whole life insurance policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend. But if we can get past what it is that I just said, and it'll take a few things. It'll take some imagination. It will take an open mind to be able to get past the words that I just said, to look at the next characteristics, which would be logic and reason. Because all these filters that I've described, all these characteristics that I've described, do indeed describe a whole life policy that pays a dividend from a mutual company. It has all these characteristics. So what I'm describing is a way to pay premiums to a policy where we have private ownership. Day one, we have a net worth that's represented in the death benefit, the face amount of the policy. That's going to represent a net worth, which again is great, but it doesn't mean the same thing, in my opinion, if not coupled with access to a present day net value of that ultimate death benefit, that ultimate net worth. Again, consider a house. You cannot realize the value of a house unless you either liquidate it or leverage it. I would argue that leverage is better than liquidation, but to each their own. So the whole life policy, when it's properly structured, and it's with a mutual company that pays a dividend, this kind of a policy that I'm describing is perfectly collateralized in that it has a death benefit that is guaranteed. This is permanent life insurance. So a guaranteed death benefit that also has a cash value today. And as the owner of that policy with guaranteed access to that capital, I can access that capital today with a policy loan to be able to use my capital today. So why am I describing this? Well, I'm describing this because, again, it has the whole life policy I'm describing has all of the characteristics that I would imagine we would want in a qualified plan that just don't exist in the qualified plan. I cannot leave my money in a qualified plan, set it and forget it like it's purported to us, and also access it if I have a vacation that I want to take, or an emergency pop up, or something changes. I mean, just so many different life events. And we hear about this. We hear about folks who, they either cannot access that money if they don't want to pay all the fees and the penalties and the taxes to access before they are allowed, or they do and they bite that excruciating bullet, so to speak, of paying tens of percentages of what they were growing there. So whole life, described as in R. Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, is meeting all of these characteristics that we would want in an asset. Now, I'm not calling it an investment, and for good reason. Practicing the infinite banking concept by utilizing the capital in policies represented in their cash values, being able to use that today allows us to account for the banking purpose in our lives. But again, if you want to have the 401ks or any other of these paper assets or anything else, if you want to be able to invest in real estate, whatever the case may be, precious metals, cryptocurrencies, I don't care, fill in the blank. My take is that you should be your own banker. let's account for our need for finance first, because we are going to finance all these things. As the consumer, we're going to finance whatever it is that we are investing in, or wherever we are saving money, or wherever we are buying and consuming. So let's account for that first. And when we do that, if we still want to go out and get the 401k, great, do it. But I can't do the reverse. I cannot begin a 401k, access my capital from the 401k while it still compounds. That's not going to happen. The compounding has been interrupted now. And then I couldn't use that to go out and get anything else, precious metals or cryptocurrencies or whole life insurance or real estate or anything else. That scenario doesn't work, but the opposite does. You could fund whole life policies that you own and control. You access the capital in those policies today to be able to finance whatever it is that you were going to do otherwise. So I don't want you to understand that I'm saying don't do this, don't do that. Again, become your own banker. I'm asking you to consider, does a qualified plan have the characteristics that you want? Or is it lacking in access and control and you setting the terms and conditions, guaranteed growth, no market volatility, and many other characteristics that you may want to have in an asset? But again, if you do decide on getting a qualified plan, fantastic. You can still become your own banker while doing that. The idea of banking and buying these whole life policies allows us to add an and to this sentence. If you want a 401k, fantastic. That's one route to go. Do it. If you want a 401k and all these other characteristics that we've talked about, do that. And then if you ultimately, with education, learning more about the facts of whole life insurance done this way, then again, I'm supporting the idea that you should be your own banker. Do whatever it is that you want to be able to do with your money. Let me interject one quick thought and question right here. When we use the term qualified plan, who is it that's qualified this plan? What amount of trust are we willing to put in that entity that deems these plans to be qualified? And at the same time is putting limits on how much we can put in them, when we can access, fees, penalties, taxes, age brackets. I mean, I'm just saying, let's question who has set up this system of qualified plans. And how are they running their house? I mean, you could go to the debt clock on the internet. You can look up the debt clock, the United States debt clock. I think that would be a very telling point to consider to answer the question that I'm laying out here now, and just evaluate where is this information coming from. Who's the source? A good friend of mine says, consider the source. So I'm just asking us to consider the source when looking at whether or not to participate with a qualified plan. So I hope that this discussion has been helpful for you in vetting and considering and implementing the infinite banking concept or qualified plans. If you would like to continue this conversation, you can reach me at 828-817-4223, or you can email durhamtalents@gmail.com. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day. Take care.